Creativity is alive and well. We know that when we feel it pulsating within ourselves. The heart of creativity is latent in us. When we take care of it, we fertilize and prioritize it. Art arrives, inspiration arrives, but it always finds us when we are looking for it, thirsty of it, ready to devote ourselves to it, willing to submerge in whatever journey it has waiting for us. What does it ask in exchange? For us to offer our compromise to it, our creative loyalty to fulfill the project. Surrender, curiosity, play, and hands-on work. The creative ideas arrive in different ways, and the same happens with inspirations, sometimes alone in silence in a meadow or anywhere in nature. Sometimes meditating in the art studio, in rituals, with friends. And sometimes the inspiration comes by osmosis, when we are inspired by the force and creative liberty that other artists devote to their craft. Seeing art by artists who give their all to their craft. The ones who submerge themselves in the project, the ones who trusted, created, and shared. How far can we go if we trust the process, especially when there isn't a clear ending? How beautiful when we trust in that project, even when we only have hints of where it is taking us, but it feels intuitive, still incomplete, waiting for our thirst to co-create. For input. The calling is strong and we know it. The trust that there is something there worth exploring, a pull, something that wants to be birthed through your art, not only because of what it wants to become and how it will affect those who interact with it once it's ready, but because of what it will mean to you, the artist, during the creative process. Qué maravilla todo lo que el proceso te va a enseñar. How wonderful everything that this project will teach you. Before I keep rambling away, I wanted to say thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video. Squarespace gives you everything you need to offer services and get paid. From having an online store where people from around the world can buy your art, to offer services like in-person and online workshops. With member areas, you can create a virtual space dedicated to all the learning tools you offer. All of this with customizable website design to cater your aesthetic and needs while offering convenient payment options like Squarespace Payments, Klarna, Apple Pay, and many more. We are partnering up to offer you a 2-week free trial, and once you're ready to launch, you can use the code Caro Arevalo to get 10% of your first purchase of a website or domain with them. I recently spent a few days in New York City, and I wanted to share with you how inspired I have returned. Anytime that I go to the city, I try to do as much as I can and go to as many art shows as I can and see as many friends as possible. And I have returned from the city the most inspired I've been in a very long time. I went to see a few art shows that I really wanted to check out at the Brooklyn Museum and at Park Armory, and I also went to 2 concerts. I went to see Rosalía perform her Lux tour, and I also went to see Catriel y Paco Amoroso perform their Free Spirits tour. I honestly feel this trip to the city has been so inspiring. I have come back home feeling that the art is well and alive, that the artists are well and alive, and that there's so much beauty in getting inspired by other creators who are truly devoted to their art. I've been the most blown away by the Rosalía concert and by Iris van Herper's retrospective at the Brooklyn Museum. And I feel that getting inspired by other artists is not necessarily about the art. I know that probably a lot of you don't love Rosalia's music or you don't resonate with the designs that Iris Van Herper creates. But what I feel is the beauty in getting inspired by other creators' art is just, I feel we can all tell when someone is fully devoted to their craft, when someone has really gone down the rabbit hole with a creativity and with a creative muse and been like, I'm here, I'm ready, show me what we can co-create, and then just trusting that vision. I remember being at Rosalia's show, and if you have the opportunity to go see this show, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. I believe that for the first time I went to a concert and I left feeling that I didn't go to a concert, but rather I went to a theater performance in the best way possible. Rosalia was in the stage with all the dancers, and then there was an orchestra, and the orchestra was in the middle of the dance floor. You know how in stadiums usually you have everybody sitting down, and then on the platea, like on the first floor, you have everybody standing up. So in the middle of everybody standing up, that's where the orchestra was. And just, oh my God, it's like, I don't even have words, but I arrived back home to my friend Mariana's where I was staying, and we were chatting about the show throughout the night. And I was researching everybody who had been part of these performance because I really wanted to know who the orchestra was, who the director of the orchestra was, because just seeing her energy was like, oh my God, I really need to know who this person is and what they're all about and where do they come from. And I was also researching like who has helped design the performance and the dance around the show, and learning that La Horde, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, or La Horde was part of the show, and just like, who's everybody behind everything, the clothing, the dance moves, all of it. And I left even more inspired just doing some research on who are all these people, what's their work about. And I'm just so inspired from, something that me and my friend Mariana kept saying during the show as we went together is how Rosalia is not just a singer. She is a 360-degree artist. It was a theater show. The fact that the orchestra was playing throughout the whole show, from playing symphony to playing classical music to playing reggaeton to playing hardcore techno, all of it, and the same with the dancers. Like, how can you have a group of dancers that are so solid that they can go from dancing hardcore techno and creating a choreography around it to doing the same for classical music, for ballet, for reggaeton, for all of it. And all of this, not to praise Rosalia, but rather what I was left the most with is how beautiful that someone out there, whether that is a painter or a musician or any type of artist, has really devoted to their craft in a way that feels refreshing, that it feels like everything has been thought of, someone that has studied so much different things in order to create their own thing. I've just been left so inspired by, I don't know, anytime that I see an artist that feels to be so devoted to their practice, that inspires me to devote myself to my practice even more. I know that a lot of us are in the studios by ourselves, and sometimes it seems that we are the only ones doing this thing, but then seeing artists that are like so devoted either to their vision or to their intuition feels like an affirmation that it is so important to really just devote ourselves to the process, to the curiosity, to the hints that we feel. And I know that, sometimes as creators, there comes this time where we're like, I'm unsure of where I'm going. And sometimes that becomes a place where a lot of us stop because we don't really have the vision of what the final product will be, what our art will look like at the end. And maybe we just have like the coro like of a song, or we have like, I don't know where this painting is going to finalize, but I know some hints of where it's going. I don't know exactly all the plants or fungi that I'm going to include in this purple area. I do know that I want to include pink oyster mushroom close to the bottom. So that moment of like, I don't know what the final vision is. I do have some hints of where I'm going, and I do feel these like bubbling explosion of curiosity to devote myself to this project. And I've just been thinking a lot about that. I've been thinking about how creativity asks of us not to be fully ready. It doesn't ask of us to know how the final piece will look, but it rather asks us to be there and be present and devote ourselves and compromise. And another artist that I've been fully blown away these days in the city is Iris van Herper. I've adored Iris van Herper's clothing for years, and ever since finding out about the amazing work that they do, I would always say like, I know which designer I would work with if I ever go to the Met Gala. And if you don't know Iris van Herper, please make your creative juice and your eyes a favor, because the pieces that Iris creates are so creative. And before seeing the show, I knew that it was connected to the sacred geometry in nature, to the shapes of the natural world inspired by plants and fungi and the ocean, etc. But when I went to the show, I realized the depth of that investigation and the amount of co-creation that happens when Iris is creating a new piece. I was just so inspired by knowing how deeply close Iris works with architects, biologists, mycologists, and everybody in between. The show is created in such a way that you're pretty much invited to the universe that happens in Iris's mind or heart in order to create each one of these dresses. And there's even a part of the show where you are in of course, it's like a version of Iris's art studio, and it's just so beautiful to see all the in-depth play that happens there, from all the materials that are tried out, to the shapes that are being created, to the patterns that are being followed, to the mathematical repetitions that are happening in order to create these designs. There's even a dress that was created with algae, and if it's put in certain light, it will glow in the dark like some special algae do. I just left the museum being in complete awe of how much an artist can just devote themselves to their craft and also to specific projects. And I've just been thinking a lot about not only the beauty of really trusting and showing up and being there and investigating and creating and trial and error, but also I feel that sometimes as a society, we're only seeing the final result of an art piece. And yes, I feel there's so much beauty into, when the art is ready and then it's out in the world, and how that interacts with absolutely everybody that sees or hears that piece or that project. That's a whole amazing, beautiful thing. But the thing that as a creator, I think the most is the process of being in the studio and creating this piece, bringing it to life once you already know, once you start putting hands and action into it, as well as the process of the trial and error. I don't know why Rosalia, but I keep mentioning her work. There is this beautiful video that Rosalia and Instagram collaborated on, and it's all about el arte del fallo, the art of failing. And it's such a beautiful short piece, and the one Rosalia talks about how much she loves failing at creating her art because that's where she's learning. And I feel there's, as me personally, as an artist, I also mentioned that I went to Catriel y Paco Amoroso's show, and I went to the show with my beautiful and talented artist friend and tattoo artist, Ana Cabrera. And Ana and I, before going to the show, we met up to have a drink, and we were just talking nonstop about the creative act and about, you know, pursuing that boiling, amazing feeling that we all have when creating. But something that was coming up a lot, maybe because Anna is an art therapist as well, is just how much the creative process when you're alone in your studio, pretty much trying and playing and being curious and, you know, dabbling with different things, whether that is themes or materials or anything in the creative process, how that, no matter if it ends up being on the final piece or not, the actual journey of creating something becomes such a therapy. And I know there's so many types of therapies, but for me, I couldn't vouch more on the creative process done alone, but also in groups. But I'm speaking specifically alone because you don't have another person to como que rebotar ideas with. It just becomes such a space where therapy is being done, and where you are learning so much about like your thought process limitations, like mental limitations, and also physical limitations, talking about how much time we have to devote to our art versus how much we actually know. And I love that part of the process of being like, I want to draw a bird. I have no idea how to do it. I'm not good at doing feathers. Okay, so that means I need to pause the piece and then go into a whole time outside of the painting that I'm creating to learn how to make a feather, how to use an art supply. You know, I feel there's just so many small, teeny, tiny doors that open throughout the creative process, that I've been seeing the creative process as a fractal, you know, like a Mandelbrot fractal. And the more you zoom in, the more you're opening 1,000 doors. And I feel that is a therapeutic / beautiful part of the process. Of course, there also needs to be a way in order to start closing those doors and coming back to simplifying and finishing the project. But I'm just speaking about like how many layers a creative process has there's just so much, and we could make a whole video about that. So if that's something that interests you, please let me know, because as you can see, I get very excited and inspired about this. I feel that the creative process is literally the process that has taught me the most, because it's the limitations that I have as a person, my limiting beliefs as a person on one side, and then on the other side, the fears that I may have. And then is this fear going to stop me, or am I going to do the thing even though I'm fearful? And that's been the case for me forever. There's a beautiful quote by Georgia O'Keeffe that speaks about fear, and I'm sure I'm going to include it here somewhere because I don't remember it by heart. But doing the thing with fear, it's something that I keep learning throughout the creative process. Being shown and being humbled by my technique is not the best. That means I need to put some time and effort into learning. And there's just so much that comes with that. And we could talk about how difficult it is to create when you are in survival mode, and then how difficult it is to create when, even though you're not in survival mode anymore, your mentality and your DNA still thinks you are in survival mode, and how to tell your body and your soul that you're not in survival mode any longer, and then you can really devote to the creative process. So I feel that's a whole other conversation. It's something that Ana and I were actually talking, having a drink before Catriel y Paco, and I've just been so... me siento como que he recordado cómo sentirme viva a través de la creatividad de otras personas. I don't know, I feel I've just been so inspired by seeing other artists' art, and artists that are 360, artists that are showing up in their absolute vulnerability in order to create. And I feel you can feel that when you see the final piece. You're like, damn, this is actually art, you know, like this is something that someone spoke directly to the universe and they co-created this. So I have just been so inspired by that, and just I've come back to the studio thinking like sometimes I am so fearful to come back and sit and paint, and I'm just in this like, should I not? Or I'm like, no, there's so much logistic stuff that I need to focus on my art business. And then I focus on that and I forget the importance to devote to really committing to the art piece and being there for it. And of course, most of us are not rich and we don't have trust funds. And most of us don't have 24 hours a day in order to devote to create art. Wouldn't that be the dream? But I think that part of the beauty is with everything that the world throws at us and everything we have also decided to be responsible of, how do we make time to be in the creative state even if we have little time? And that's a question I don't have an answer for. But I just wanted to sit down here, and I probably have rambled for a little too much time, so I'm going to stop this video here. But I'm just hopeful and I'm inspired and I'm excited to be back from the city and report that the art is well and the art is alive. And, you don't need to be Rosalia with a huge budget as she has today. She didn't have a budget when she started. She was going to go bankrupt if El Mal Querer didn't become what it became for her. And she knew she had put all of her soul there. So she was like, fuck it, we need to try this and see if it works. And, just to close this, one artist that I went to see their show. Okay, I am definitely not going to pronounce this name correctly, so I'm sorry in advance. But I went to see a show called Clinamen at the Park Armory, and the artist's name is Celeste Boursier Mougenot. And this is a show in the one you have a huge warehouse looking space and 3 pools of water filled with different size and shape porcelain bowls. And, the bowls are moving through the water and they're clinching, crashing into one another. They're not breaking. They're just making a sound anytime they touch each other, and they go in different directions. So each one of the pools is creating a different sound. And guests are invited to arrive there in silence and sit or lay down wherever they want. And it's pretty much a water and porcelain happening / sound bath. And I went with my friend Riru, who is an amazing painter we met back in art school in Peru. And I'm including Riru's Instagram here in case you want to see Riru's work. Anyways, we arrived to the show and I just lay down and she was sitting and we were like in different spaces, each one doing our own thing and just listening to the sounds changing. And, the artist, it was such a beautiful show. That night I went to Rosalia and, just seeing the different types of art that are happening. Conclusion of this video, I'm very inspired. And I'm inspired by people who are like, I'm going to make this because it's what I truly want to do. And I just wanted to share that because, as I was saying, I feel sometimes being here alone in the studio and with the inmediatez of the things that we see on our phones or Instagram, it feels that everybody is just doing stuff like, yes, snap, snap, snap. And I feel there is a beauty in devoting to a project and taking the time that the project needs, whether that is a fast project or a very slow project, because it has 1,000 pieces that compose it. And if there's one thing that I wanted to share in this video is that it's like, trust the process of the projects that you are creating or you're dreaming of create. And I feel there's just an ineffable magic in taking our time in putting all the puzzle pieces together in order to create a masterpiece. And the masterpiece doesn't need to be a masterpiece for the world, for the New York Times. No, it needs to be a masterpiece for you as the artist and the creative process and everything you learned in the journey. That's everything that I wanted to share today. So thank you if you stayed up until the end of this video. I feel we need art more than ever and we need creativity and inspiration more than ever. And thank you Squarespace for being here and sponsoring this video. I post every other week on Sundays. So in case you like what you see, feel free to subscribe and all the things that I say at the end of the videos. I hope you're well. I send you a big hug and I'll see you some other time. Ciao.